our souls, but they also steal, and I mean steal like in steel, our resolve. Together, civilized nations will crush the terrorists, block their funding, strip them of their territory, and drive them out of this earth.
Now, Arthel, President Trump and his key advisors made much of the opening of this anti-terror center in Saudi Arabia and all of these pledges to end terrorism, essentially. But they did provide scant details of how that's all going to work. We have heard pledges before. The most concrete thing they are saying is that there is going to be a global concerted effort to go after the sources of funding for terror groups like ISIS.
Amy, what do you think will be recorded as the big highlights of the trip?
Well, there were some important economic deals, and those were, of course, inked in Saudi Arabia. The first leg of the tour, $500 billion, according to Trump's top economic advisor here, and most of that was arms, but it also, as he said, spanned various industries, including infrastructure. So that was something that was much touted. And then on to NATO. President Trump didn't specifically reaffirm his commitment to Article 5, which was somewhat controversial here, and that is that any NATO member will defend another if attacked. Trump's advisors said that it goes without saying. It's irrelevant that he didn't say this because, of course, that commitment remains. But that was something that came up and was discussed much in the European media. Finally, he did come down very hard on those NATO members who are not paying their fair share. The NATO deal is that every country has to commit 2% of its budget to defense, and President Trump believes that his tough talk is already paying off. He says now the money is, quote, flowing in. Well, we haven't again seen the details of that, but that was something that was much discussed. His bottom line here was American jobs, and of course, also when it came to talking about trade and deficits and surpluses and unfair practices, there was a lot of possibly tense discussion among the G7 members. Of course, a lot of people in Europe are concerned that some American tech companies are taking advantage of corporate tax loopholes in Europe, but also President Trump was concerned about, say, the German trade surplus when it comes to selling cars to the United States. How that playing field, Arthel, gets leveled is not clear, but President Trump leaving here quite confident that he made a point that he wants to make sure that Americans buy as much American as possible and that jobs come back to the United States. Arthel.
Amy Kellogg, 12:05 in the morning there in Italy. Thanks so much, Amy.
Now, meanwhile, President Trump will try to parlay the results of that overseas trip into success here at home. The president hoping to make up some ground on his aggressive agenda, not to mentioning that big job opening, selecting a new FBI director. Garrett Tenney is live in Washington with more on the workload the president faces when he returns back into the Oval Office. Hi, Garrett.
Well, Eric, earlier this week, President Trump asked his team to expand the search for a new FBI director and to line up more candidates for him to consider when he gets back. But as Amy mentioned, at the end of his first foreign trip, the president had other jobs on his mind, tweeting this afternoon, bringing hundreds of billions of dollars back to the USA from the Middle East, which will mean jobs, jobs, jobs. As for the rest of his agenda, the White House says it plans to use the momentum from this trip to push some of the big ticket items along, including the budget, tax reform, and health care. But there are also concerns that the looming controversy surrounding the investigations into Russia and connections to the Trump team could derail those efforts. The White House is hoping to prevent that, though, and is planning a number of meetings this week to discuss possible changes to help with those efforts. Some of the potential changes the president is said to be considering include a staff shakeup at the White House, as well as having lawyers vet his tweets before they go out. Lawyers are also expected to come up in meetings after this past week when the president hired his longtime attorney Mark Kasowitz to represent him in the federal investigation into his ties between the campaign and Russia. And we're told he may be looking to build out his legal team even more so that the White House can focus solely on his agenda. At this point, though, senior officials tell us those changes are still being discussed and that ultimately it will be the president who decides when he gets back in town.
All right, Garrett, thanks so much.
You got it.
And Garrett and Eric, President Trump also returning to the cloud of controversy surrounding his administration over the Russia investigations. His son Eric Trump blasting any suspicions, calling them a cover for disappointed Democrats.
Father's had a lot of success, but media keeps on harping on Russia, Russia, Russia. What's he going to do to neutralize that?
That's all nonsense. I mean, it's a witch hunt. It's really, really insane. I think Syria, quite frankly, demonstrated that there wasn't exactly anything with Russia. But hey, listen, there was a political party. They got beaten very badly by a person who came out of nowhere, who everybody wrote off, who everybody gave no chance to. They outspent us 7-1, and he won. And there's some pretty disappointed people out there, and so they want to further a narrative for their own political agenda. And I really believe that they would rather see this country fail than see him succeed.
So the Russia thing is a hoax.
It's a total hoax.
And you can see the full interview on Waters World. It's airing at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight and tomorrow night right here on the Fox News Channel.
But meanwhile, there's been a horrible stabbing spree. It happened on a commuter train, sparked witnesses say, by an apparent hate crime. A pair of Good Samaritans were trying to help 2 women passengers. They were killed and another was injured in Portland, Oregon on that train. Will Carr live in the West Coast newsroom with the details. Hi, Will.
Hey there, Eric, and we're learning that years ago the suspect was shot in the face by a police officer, but we want to start with the victims. Authorities just released their names. 53-year-old Ricky John Best and 23-year-old Tali Shin Nam Kai Mei She were killed Friday. Authorities say both were innocent bystanders who simply stepped in to de-escalate a volatile situation. Witnesses say Jeremy Joseph Christian was spewing hate-filled slurs at 2 women, both believed to be Muslim. That's when the Good Samaritans intervened, and authorities say Christian then pulled a knife and stabbed both. A 3rd man was also stabbed but survived. Listen to one witness describe the chaos.
I was scared.
Say what?
I was so scared. And so I knocked on the door at the driver to let him know. People calling for help for the 911. So we called 911. Almost everybody called 911.
Authorities say the Christian fled on foot and taunted officers before being taken into custody.
Yes, Aaron, I was on the max.
Christian is charged with a number of crimes, including aggravated murder. He's set to appear in court on Monday. Eric.
And meanwhile, what else do we know about that man right there? What do we know about that suspect?
Well, our break room did some digging and found out that back in 2002, he was shot in the face by a police officer after he robbed a North Portland market. The bullet went through his cheek. Christian has past convictions for felony robbery, kidnapping, and possessing an unlawful weapon. Also, according to local journalists in Portland, he'd been in recent rallies espousing hateful remarks about Muslims. Eric.
All right, well, thank you so much. Arthel?
I'm no stranger to the street. I've got my leg on.
And that is the unforgettable voice of Greg Allman singing I'm No Angel. We have sad news to report this Saturday. Greg Allman, the legendary frontman of the Allman Brothers Band, has died. His publicist says Greg passed away today in his home in Savannah, Georgia. He had been in poor health for about a year. And in March, Greg Allman was forced to cancel performances through the remainder of 2017. Greg and his brother Dwayne formed the backbone of the Allman Brothers Band. Greg Allman, singer, songwriter, and a rock and roll giant, was 69 years old.
Well, we just heard Eric Trump when he was on the golf cart talking to Jesse Waters, saying that the Russian allegations are a hoax. But now there are some new questions this weekend over Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and his meetings with some top Russian officials. We'll discuss how all this could potentially play out straight ahead. And if you visited Chipotle recently, well, you may want to check your credit card statements. Why some customers could be left with a bad taste in their mouths.
Constipated? Fleet Liquid Glycerin is delivered straight to the source, so it delivers constipation relief in as little as 15 minutes. Telcalax oral tablets can take 6 hours to work. Fleet Liquid Glycerin Suppositories, the start of fast relief.
I count on my Dell Small Business Advisor for tech advice. With one phone call, I get products that suit my needs, and I get back to business.
How can I help you today?
Yeah, I need to file a claim. My central air stopped working and needs to be replaced.
Oh, sorry, your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover air conditioners.
So what do you cover?
Well, home damage from things like earthquakes, volcanoes, a zombie apocalypse.
Zombie apocalypse.
Covered.
But not my air conditioner.